Okay, so we will move on. We're going to move on to topic 2, building the right infrastructure. And I'd like to invite Mr. James Mast, Mr. Hiroyuki Aoki, and Mr. Peter Vanden Bossche to come up on the stage, please. You're up first, so why don't you hang there? Yeah. Okay, so James is the EV project manager for the city of Portland and C40 EV Network City. Mr. Aoki is the senior manager for international affairs of the Mobility Technology Group in the R&D Center of the Tokyo Electric Power Company. And Mr. Vanden Bossche is the secretary of the IEC, secretary of the IEC in Belgium. So I'll ask James to kick us off on concepts for designing charging infrastructure. James.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Stephen. Stephen's been really great in working with us in Portland and listening to what we have to say about what we're doing in our fair city. I wanted to start out first with a little bit of background on Portland, since many of you may not be familiar with Portland, and then I will jump into a discussion on what we're doing around level 2 charging. A little bit of background. So the city is just shy of 600,000 residents, and the metro area is 2.2 million with a state population of 3.7 million. So a bit on the smaller side for a lot of the C40 cities. The Pacific Northwest corridor surrounding Portland is about a 10 million population. Some of the unique characteristics of Portland, the city is within a region that's defined by an urban growth boundary, so it limits development activity within a certain radius of the city. And that's it measures about 35 to 40 miles across at its widest point. And for a West Coast auto-oriented city, this is a very tight urban environment. Another point to make is the city is seen very high hybrid adoption rates. As you heard earlier from London, that's a good indicator of potential EV buyers. So we have a good feeling there's going to be a lot of people signing up for electric vehicles. Another point, too, is that the city is the Pacific Northwest is a temperate climate, so it provides a great test bed for electric vehicles because there aren't extreme heat or extreme cold, which can be detrimental potentially to batteries. And lastly, the state, city, and region have really a long-standing demonstrated leadership in urban planning, transit, biking, and sustainability initiatives, setting the stage for strong EV adoption. A little bit about what the city has been doing along with the state and its partners. Within this context I just set in terms of a ripe, fertile environment for EVs. The city, state, and university and utility partners have focused on creative, receptive environment for sustainable mobility options, particularly electric vehicles, and creating a living laboratory for EVs. To aid these efforts, the city and its partners have taken actions to support the emerging industry and foster consumer acceptance. The city specifically has appointed myself as the point person for the city on EVs, and we subsequently established a cabinet across different city agencies to coordinate activities and streamline activities to promote and improve potential adoption of EVs. From that group, we developed a city strategy, which was intentionally designed to be flexible and adaptive, to focus city efforts around electric vehicles and promoting them. And a part of that, too, we've developed a public education website which has a permitting component, which will allow for online permitting and inspection within 48 hours for residential charging stations. And in addition to that, as I mentioned before, we work very closely with the state and our utility and university partners. And we've been recognized as a launch point for the Navistar E-Star truck, which those of you from the European side may know this as a MODEC truck, electric delivery truck, that they had launched their electric vehicle, recognizing the potential marketplace in Portland. We are also one of the early launch points for the Nissan Leaf, as well as we're in the process of, our university is working with Toyota on plug-in Toyota Prius testing in a sort of consumer environment. Our utility partner, Portland General Electric, had installed, and you can see actually in this photograph one of the charging stations that they had installed. They installed a limited network of level 1 charging stations in the metropolitan area. That sort of served as a baseline, and it serves the limited number of electric vehicles that are on the road today that can use level 1, which is basically just a standard plug. The utility is planning to actually upgrade these units as the level 2 units get deployed throughout the region. And one point I do want to make, and that we recognize in our city strategy, is that while we recognize that EVs are not the answer, they're an answer to dealing with sustainable mobility issues and reducing our city's carbon footprint and addressing our climate action goals. But we think that it's one of the best means to get an auto-oriented culture into more efficient and more environmentally sustainable vehicles. So now I'm going to talk a bit about the EV project, which you may or may not be familiar with. The U.S. Department of Energy awarded over $100 million nationally initially in five markets to promote electric vehicle infrastructure. And Oregon, the state of Oregon, was designated as one of those areas. The administrating entity of this is Ecotality, and Ecotality I think is going to be speaking later in the session. But we are working with Ecotality on this deployment of public use charging stations. The EV project in Oregon, and it's not strictly limited to Portland, the Portland region. It's actually the western portion of Oregon, which has the majority of the population. There will be a deployment of about 2,000 total units, which includes 1,100 public use units and about 900 units that are going to be deployed with designated registered participants that are purchasing Nissan Leafs. So it is in conjunction with Nissan to get these deployed units out. What this will mean for the Portland metro area is approximately 500 level 2 units. Now these are 240 volt units that can charge a vehicle in about 4 to 6 hours, the Nissan Leaf in about 4 to 6 hours. And as an additional part of this deployment, there will be 24 fast charge units deployed along the interstate corridor, I-5 corridor, that will help connect the north-south within the state. The city is definitely recognizes the critical importance of installing this initial infrastructure as a safety net for consumers to provide confidence as they shift to electric vehicles. We're working closely with Ecotality and on strategic initiatives to complement the EV project. The scale of this deployment, when fully realized, we believe will provide a mature level 2 network within the metro region, especially considering our size. This scale of, depending on the level of EV adoption, this network should be more than sufficient to carry forward the city for the near term in terms of baseline safety net infrastructure. We are aware too that a lot of charging will be done during the evening by people plugging in at home, but we want to provide that safety net and that level of confidence to the consumers as they're out on the road. Now, as part of this, the bulk of these charging stations will actually be deployed on private property, and Ecotality is responsible for securing host sites for these charging stations. We're working with them, helping them to identify sites that we believe are critical from the city's perspective in terms of location, But Ecotality has been working on a very, as you can see it in the background, it's a hard map to make out at this scale, but basically they've devised a density map which shows higher concentrations of development of corridors, travel patterns, and destinations that are going to be key areas that it's going to be important to deploy charging stations within. And that's driving the process of locating the sites. Ecotality's also gained input from the Metro, which is the regional planning agency and regional government agency, and that is helping to guide this the process of where these units will be deployed within the Metro region. In addition, obviously, to the bulk of these units going on private property, the city will provide host sites in public garages and in public right-of-way where feasible and where prudent. And this deployment, as you heard, the LEAF is going to be introduced in December of this year, and this project is going to be starting to deploy within the next month as well. So we'll start to see level 2 units throughout the region starting as early as this month, actually. And the full deployment is expected by June of 2011, so that by then we'll have a pretty mature network of units. The other key that I did want to mention too with the EV project, the units that are placed are primarily going to be at high turnover locations. They're not meant for, in addition to obviously the residential units going with the cars, they're not really focusing on at-work locations. That's an area we're looking to complement the project for at-work charging. The rationale for that is that they're looking to gather data, and this is a grand experiment. The project will be working with Idaho National Labs to study usage patterns so that we can see where the best places for these charging units are. We can all take our best guess by putting red dots on a map, but the reality is going to be dictated by consumer usage, and that's what this project is going to look to study. What I do want to also mention, obviously, is and I know this is going to be discussed later, but we recognize the importance of of DC fast charging to a mature network. There are some within this project, but the state of Oregon is actually looking to install some more in a wider area. Just want to talk about looking ahead from the great leap forward that we're going to have from the EV project. As I was mentioning, the state was just actually awarded $2 million for a fast charge network in the northwestern portion of the state. That's going to supplement the EV project, and this is actually, we think, going to be a great network for our residents to get out of the city and get out to the sort of countryside, the coast, and the mountains, and not have any fear that they're going to be stuck there and not be able to charge quickly to get back to the city. We are going to continue working with Ecotality, and we're very excited that this will be coming in the next few months. And we're looking to not only work with them, but to be supportive and complementary to them with city funds and activities. And lastly, we're going to be continuing to work around economic development around our local industry and working with major OEMs to find partnership opportunities and opportunities for pilots within the city and the region. And that's it. I got a timeout. So thank you.